Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Tuesday. It is March the 4th, and happy birthday to my lovely wife. I will always remember my wife's birthday now because I remember my wife's 40th birthday, which happened on the same. It was a State of the Union. It was a Friday, and interestingly enough, I had been kicked out of the office from the FBI since November of 2021, and in 2022, on March the 4th, I was invited to come back in because the rules changed under the Biden administration, something that many of us kind of experienced over and over again, this sort of like moving goalposts, this arbitrary definition. And we're dealing with the residue, we're dealing with sort of the legacy of Joe Biden over the last couple of years. We're seeing some really dishonest, bizarre things that are happening. But my life was forever changed on that day. I got to go back in the office and found out that my boss was sharing information, was downloading body cam footage and showing it to my coworkers in order to embarrass me. And that launched, in many ways, the trajectory and put me on the path that I'm in today, where we debunk the myths about the FBI, where we tell the truth about what goes on in government. We give people a glimpse behind the curtain. And we're going to do a little bit more of that today. And it's not going to be the most pro-rah-rah, pom-pom moment because we're dealing with a real crisis right now, folks. And some people don't know it. They have an instinct of it. The Epstein files and the binders that went on last week has given them a little look into it. I want to tell you that we are in the middle of a battle that we are actually losing. And I don't mean that in a mean way. And I don't mean it to sound like I'm being panicky. But there is a battle for our federal government, and one of the most important tools in the federal government is the actual piece that can reach out into your home and arrest you, could kill you, could imprison you. And that is the DOJ, and specifically the largest piece of the DOJ's sort of action arm, which is the FBI. I think there are other parts of the government that people are aware of that come into your pocketbooks. For example, the IRS is actually a really, really important battle as well. But I don't think most people understand what is happening today. And everybody wants to paint it with this sort of like rosy, we're going to win because we've got this opportunity right now. Donald Trump's in the White House. Everything's going to be great. That was step one. That was like a coin toss. I think I explained this with somebody the other day. We're watching the coin land. Imagine this as your metaphor. Kash Patel being sworn in, being confirmed and then sworn in. Pam Bondi being confirmed and sworn in. That was the gate dropping on a landing craft at the beaches of Normandy. And what is happening right now is the fight that took place on the first day. It's an amphibious landing attempting to regain the most dangerous piece of property in the federal government, the part that can actually come out and kill you. The part that went into Donald Trump's house, as so many of you guys like to remind me, and looked through his wife's underwear drawer. That animal is now fighting for its own life, fighting for its own status quo, and status quo equals the most dangerous thing. And folks are acting like the Epstein files are somehow the goal. No, they are not. They are a symptom. They are a symptom of something that is truly outrageous, an unaccountable federal bureaucracy that is resisting control by the chief executive of the United States. It had no problem submitting to Biden. But we saw it in 2016, the fact that they investigated Donald Trump at that time and resisted throughout those 4 years, jumped in line immediately with Joe Biden, did a purge of people that believed in their oath, that believed in the Constitution. Guys like me lost our jobs because we stood up and said, absolutely not. Are you out of your mind? You don't get to tell me what to do with my medical decisions. And by the way, they use that autonomy, that belief in a God that is above government, to be a deciding factor to sweep out everyone that might be resistant to a progressive leftist agenda. So here we are. And we're in a battle to get it back. And it is a no-lose mission. If you fail this mission, we don't win, period. This is not something that they can accidentally kind of solve the problem later. I know Dan Bongino has said that he's going to stop doing his radio show and his podcast on March the 14th. So he's got 10 more days. That could honestly be the difference between it not winning and being a victory. Like, I don't even know if we can afford that kind of time. And it feels very imminent to those of us that have been watching this. It all comes down to this pivotal moment, and they're screwing it up. They're screwing up the landing. Imagine not getting a foothold in Europe and then still trying to win World War II. Doesn't happen. I'm going to let you know that today we're going to be talking about something that's truly dangerous, truly scary, and I'm going to play you a couple of glib clips of people who don't seem to really get it. I don't think they understand what it is that they're fighting for and the consequences of it, or they don't care. Either way, unacceptable from where I sit. All right. That's where we're going. Does that get you started, folks? Because that's where we're going to be heading into. That's the stuff that's on the line today. And it is not something that is done lightly. All right. Okay, so we're going to get into an ad read, and then we're going to get into all of this, and it is pretty heavy because, like I said, the consequences of it are fairly dire, and I don't like being the bearer of bad news, but there's no other way to deal with it. Let's first start off with the folks over at Patriot Protect. If you guys want to go and sign up and get yourself protected, it's patriot-protect.com/Kyle. They're the service that we use in the Seraphin house. Both my wife and I are both signed up. Newsweek did report a massive data breach. It doesn't actually matter. If you keep looking at the news, you're always going to see data breaches. Millions of Americans and their data always put at risk. The breaches include background checks. They include opportunities for cyber criminals to get access to your personal information, whether it be your social security number, your full name, your home address, your phone numbers, blah, blah, blah. Drug test results have been leaked. These things can be exposed on the dark web and sold off. It's much worse than getting a password leak. This is the kind of data that allows someone to actually impersonate you because they have enough to be able to pretend to be you. If you want to get that information off the web, you have to sign up with somebody that's going to get it. You could probably sit there and scrub it, but you don't have time. I promise you, you just don't have time to develop your own protocols. So if you guys want to go with Patriot Protect, that's the company that we use, patriot-protect.com/Kyle. They use a new service. They're calling it the blackout service. It scans the dark web, trying to find your stolen data. It's going to be trying to eliminate the stuff that's out there being bought and sold. They're trying to keep you from the exposure that you might otherwise have. They use a search and destroy protocol that goes out there and scrubs over 100 plus data brokers and websites that scammers and criminals are using to access your information and then use it to impersonate you and scam you and steal from you. If you want to continuously monitor this stuff, check it out. Again, it's patriot-protect.com/KYLE. 15% off by using our promo code. All right, enough doom and gloom. Let's get into the actual nuts, the nuts of the argument here, because I do think that you guys have to understand how it works if you want to get into why it's so dangerous. Yes, indeed. Okay, I don't know why I cut the music so short. Let's just get into it right now. The first story I want to come into is Donald Trump shutting down foreign aid. This has been used as a distraction, folks. Like I said, there is a really, really important battle that's happening. And in the meantime, we're going to be paying attention to some minor wins. That's cool. I think it's great. I think we should be winning on this. And it seems like Trump has done this. This is coming from my friends over at Catholic Vote, who I still get the loop every single morning. If you guys aren't getting that, catholicvote.org/loop is a great email. You guys should check it out as well. Trump administration is pausing all foreign aid to Ukraine, including weapons already stationed or sent over to Poland. So this is like stopping it. Even stuff that's already mid-shipment, it is not going in until Vladimir Zelensky demonstrates a greater commitment to peace, according to Fox News. That's the statement. The pause was just announced as of yesterday after a tense meeting on the 28th that happened last week between Zelensky and J.D. Vance and President Donald Trump. At the White House, the meeting was aimed to sign some kind of a mineral deal. They were going to do like rare earth minerals that are accessible to people in Ukraine, and we were going to deal with like a mining contract. And then instead, he decided to try to adjudicate his request for more money and tried to bring sort of like a shame fest, because the media that covers Donald Trump is inherently going to lean on Ukrainian talking points and Democrat talking points, anything to try to shame Donald Trump, but he wasn't having it. So there you go. Senior administration official clarified that the military aid would remain on hold until the Ukrainian leaders demonstrated a commitment to peace negotiation. This is not a permanent termination of aid. It is a pause. And yet, Donald Trump holds all the cards, and he was trying to explain that to Zelensky, who wasn't listening to it. They actually had this like back and forth talking about whether or not he held enough cards. And, he's like, look, you just don't have them. You're not in a position to be able to make these arguments. You can't come at me because you don't have the strength. You're not in a position of any kind of strength. And just like, hey, bud, straighten it out. Not going to happen. I think I've got a clip here that was actually fairly funny. It was like somebody redubbed all the stuff. And let me see if I can make this happen here. Ready? This is kind of a joke on it. We have to have kind of a lighthearted take. Otherwise, we would just be panicking. And I don't want to do that. Let's do Zelensky talking to Trump about whose cocaine was in the White House. Wait, what? Was that on the docket too?
Public health authorities.
That is not the one that we were just going to do. Sometimes I can't grab a clip on the fly, but I try to. Here we go. Let's do it.
That was yours. We thought that baggie belonged to Hunter. I think the Secret Service probably still has it somewhere.
I have been stealing the money.
I'm sorry, what's that now?
I must to speak honestly. I steal many of USA dollars to Ukraine. Millions. Some dollars for some oligarchs also. Some for American bureaucrats also.
Well, we know that, but why are you telling me this?
Because, Mr. Trump, if you end war, we cannot steal any more money. We must continue war.
No, the war must end. Your people are dying, Zelensky. They're dying.
But I want to steal more money. What do you want? Fellatio, I can do it.
No, I don't want fellatio. No.
Are you sure? I did for Biden.
Okay, that is what we call oversharing.
That is oversharing. I don't think that's real, but it sounds real, kind of, doesn't it? I don't know why this stuff jumps in my head. I've got two funny things like this. People, this is the problem right now in an AI society where you can take things like that and make it sound pretty legit. They can sync it up close enough to the lips. They actually sync those lips up because there's plenty of footage of both those guys. They can dump it in and they created it. Yes, that is obviously a parody of what that meeting looked like. It also was kind of what we think was going on. There were a lot of people that were talking about how he kept rubbing his nose throughout the meeting, and they were like, is he coked out? Like, what's going on with this guy? Is that what's going on with all of our foreign aid? Is it just going up this dude's nose? Is he just living in piles of cocaine? So people start speculating on it, and then you end up with like really crazy looking AI videos that kind of say the same thing. That wasn't real. I'm gonna have to say it again because they'll kick us off YouTube for it. And we're actually starting to get some funny traction over there. This is NBC covering the story. This is what I found quite interesting. Again, pick your news source, pick the way that the story is covered. In theory, ABC, CBS, NBC should all be running right down the middle. We know they run to the left, depending on how far to the left is going to be, dependent. And NBC is probably the furthest of the main news sources. They kind of like want to arm wrestle with CBS each day. It says, so this is the headline that you're seeing on the screen right now. Donald Trump orders pause on military aid to Ukraine in the wake of the Oval Office clash with Zelensky. Trump is ramping up his attacks. His attacks? Like, he's not attacking him. He's just describing him accurately, which is that this guy has basically been blowing all of our money and doing it inappropriately. As we played you that really good clip the other day of Tim Burchett getting on and telling Jake Tapper, it's like, look, by their own volition, 50% of the money is unknown. We're seeing weapons that were sold by the United States government that are turning up in the hands of terrorist organizations and or cartels. That's going to segue into some of the stuff that's going on right now because we're about to see a Supreme Court case that has a lot to do with whether or not it is the tool or the user of the tool. And I think that actually plays pretty well into the discussion of DOJ, FBI. These are tools that the government has to be able to get compliance, and maybe there's a reason for some of that. Like, people should obey federal law when it's legal, when it's in accordance with the Constitution, when we are dealing with the federal government creating safeguards against force and fraud so that people can live their lives without being, squashed. But the tool can be misused. That's what weaponization is all about. That's what the discussion about a weaponized FBI is all about. In the same way people are crying right now about tariffs. The tool can be used appropriately to leverage somebody. Donald Trump is all about doing that right now. And in 2.0, Donald Trump, in this second term, he's been trying to use these tools without asking as many apologies or asking for as much permission. He's kind of in that attitude. You guys remember ever hearing this? You grow up and people give you two options. They said you can always ask for permission or you can ask for forgiveness. You can ask for forgiveness if you just want to get forward. If you want to get things done and you might hurt some feelings, it's easier to ask for forgiveness because you already got what you needed. That's what's going on right now. He's doing this on the Mexican border. He's doing this in the Canadian border. It's upsetting people in both of those places, both of those countries. And we played you a pretty funny little TikTok from a guy who sounded British, who said that the United States only exists because Mexico and Canada are out there. Let's say that some of that is true, and I don't think it is. But imagine if some of that was true, that the United States is unable to accomplish its normal goals because things are made in Mexico and we need Canadian oil and so on. That is a national security risk. And it actually is part of the legacy of what Biden's administration did. They weakened the United States position over and over again. I don't know why. I don't know what whether the mindset was simply that they were short-sighted and they were trying to be extra nice, or whether there was some more nefarious purpose. There's probably a little bit of both, especially when you had someone that was that old, that confused, and that easily manipulated in office. The U.S. was working towards energy independence, and we're about to experience something that's probably pretty nasty. This is CBS News. It says U.S. tariffs on Mexico and Canada are going to go into effect. I think they went in effect as of midnight. A 25% tariff on all imported goods from Mexico and Canada starting at the end of Tuesday. Or starting on first thing Tuesday, that's today. After a month of aides trying to negotiate for a potential reprieve, there were duties of 10% that were put on Canadian energy products. Tariff went into effect at midnight last night, or 12:01 this morning. And it's just before Donald Trump is about to do the State of the Union, which is going to be today. Again, March 4th. I don't know if it's always the State of the Union. I don't actually remember if it's required to be that. I think it's sort of like traditional. The funny thing is that I was at a bunch of the States of the Unions, hanging out in the cold with Secret Service. It's always kind of miserable in March in Washington, D.C. We saw this stuff. And then, interestingly enough, that turn of the corner where Joe Biden announced something kind of major. Joe Biden's announcement, by the way, in 2022, was that they were going to withdraw a lot of the COVID provisions. If you recall, it kind of disappeared with a whimper. Do you know why he changed those COVID provisions, by the way? And that goes 3 years ago today. It simply came down to the fact that he didn't want people to look weak and wear masks and have to have people be distanced in order to give the State of the Union, in order to argue that the State of the Union was strong, which is what they always want to do. They always want to say, the state of our union is strong. And then you go like, oh, but except it's really not. And you've just allowed, that was right on the heels of Putin going into Ukraine for the second time. It wasn't that strong. There were a lot of really, really bad actions that had taken place, even in that short period of time. And that was after we'd have the failed and disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. So interestingly enough, I want to play a little bit of some of the consequences that are going to come out, because it's going to get ugly. Like, that's the nature of starting a trade war, particularly for the people that are right next to us. There's going to be some consequences. I've got a lighthearted take on it too. This is Doug Ford. He's the premier of Ontario, and he's basically saying that we're about to shut off power to some American states. We should not be reliant on Canada for power. It's nice to be able to have them as a trading partner. That's certainly, I get, like, I'm trying to think of what we get from Canada. In my house, we have some rubber mats. They're like horse stall mats that I use in the gym. They're all made in Canada. I could do without them, to be fair. I don't need them. We shouldn't be reliant on things like power. That's a national security crisis. We shouldn't be reliant on them for uranium to be able to run our nuclear power plants, that we don't have a reserve of that. These things are like dangerous positions. And I think that was what Donald Trump was actually trying to do. That's what energy independence was all about. For whatever reason, we became beholden to these countries under Biden, and that's really scary. All right, here's Doug Ford kind of talking about what it's going to look like. There's going to be a cost to this. It's going to hurt some people's feelings in the short run, and it might actually be really, really kind of gross. But just remember that when somebody goes back and starts causing austerity measures, they're the one that's going to take the political hit. We've got the Treasury Secretary talking about that in 1 second. They're going to take the political hit because somebody else was lazy earlier on. It's almost always the case. This is the prepare or repair argument that I like to make. We are now going to be in the repair moment, and it does cost us something. Here's Doug Ford, like I said, Premier of Ontario, talking about that.
The dollars of contracts that we have with the U.S. We are the largest purchaser of alcohol in the world. We buy over 3,600 products from 35 states. I talked to the governor of Kentucky and Mitch McConnell. Don't touch our bourbon. I'm going after absolutely everything. And I don't want to. We keep the lights on to 1.5 million homes in manufacturing in New York, in Michigan, and in Minnesota. If he wants to destroy our economy and our families, I will shut down the electricity going down to the U.S. And I'm telling you, we will do it. It's unfortunate. I would rather ship you more electricity, ship you more critical minerals. I want to ship you more energy, more potash to keep your farmers going, and uranium that you use for your nuclear power. It comes through from Saskatchewan over to Ontario, and it's going to be a massive, massive problem. I'm telling you, we love the Canadians love Americans. I love the U.S. Everyone does, and not one American friend. When I lived there for 20 years, I've talked to all of them. Hardcore Republicans are saying this is the biggest mistake President Trump has done, and we're dead against it. And I've yet to find one who supports him.
Yeah, there's going to be costs. Do you guys want to hear like a funny version of this? Because like the Snow Mexicans, it's hard to take them all that seriously. This is Doug Ford. So I did a little bit of reading on Doug Ford because I was like, oh, I know that name, Ford. I was thinking of the other Ford. That was Rob Ford, who was a crackhead. He was the mayor in Toronto, right? This is his brother. His brother is apparently like the non-screw-up version. He ran a private company. His dad started in 1962. They were businessmen. He dropped out of college. He ran this. He's been fairly successful. And like all smart business people, he decided to become a progressive conservative. I don't know what that means, but it doesn't sound like there's anything particularly conservative about what they're into. Anyhow, he's the premier over there. I have kind of like a funny take on it. This is what I heard. You guys wanted to hear the translation maybe of like, what does it sound like in reality? He said a bunch of words. They sound like they're English, but in Snow Mexican, we actually wanted to translate it back to American, and this is what it sounds like.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you are ready, sir, to go to war, to go to a trade war with the United States, with the Trump administration.
Listen, buddy, I wake up every day, I go down to my local Tim Hortons. By the way, we're going to be shutting down all the Timmies across the border there. So, sir, if you're in Michigan there and you like getting your bacon egger, or your double, I had a bacon egger today, and for Christ's sake, I thought, fucking Americans, they don't know what they're doing, but... Buddy, listen to me. My brother, he used to be the mayor of Toronto before the Chinese woman there took over, and I mean, he was smoking crack every day, and I almost want to ask Donald Trump, are you fucking smoking crack, buddy? Because you're raising the tariffs on the Lay's chips there, bud. So we're going to fucking do an retaliation. You're going to turn off all the electricity there for all the Americans, just like the Palestinians there, the Jews did there in the Gaza. So
that sounds terrifying. I hope they don't turn off all the power like they did to the Jews in the Gaza, whatever that means. Anyway, so there you go. There's a little bit of a lighthearted kind of take on this. I can't help it. I'm telling you, though, if you don't prepare, you have no other option but to repair. This is what's going on. It's going to be like a hard bite. I've got the Treasury Secretary. We'll play a little piece of that in a second because I want you guys to get a sense of it's not going to be easy. Like, this is not a problem that Donald Trump created, it turns out. And if it was, I'd be more than happy to go out there and push against it. I remember that the first official act that the Biden administration did was shut down the Keystone XL pipeline. They wanted to stop American oil independence, and these things wouldn't have been such a big problem. Trump is like, hey, I got one shot at this. I got 4 years. I'm going to use it as much as we can. And we're only like, 40 days into the administration, so we're not screwing around here. Do it early so you don't have to face it at the midterms. He's going to go out and do a State of the Union. We'll see how that goes. But like, again, this one is the most unimportant because he just got in. And all he's doing is just a flurry of activity that's going to upset a bunch of people. Who cares? I've got some of those people. What I've realized is the people that are upset, they don't even know what the hell they're talking about. And they're getting their information usually in the form of entertainment, infotainment type stuff, like more like the parody that you just heard of the fake voice. That's probably closer to the reality of what they're getting for news. It's people lampooning it. And I've got a clip from Charlemagne that I think actually, Charlemagne, who's a radio host in New York, national radio host, I guess, that actually highlights it even more appropriately. Like I said, let's go before do that. Let's talk about my friends over at Patriot, My Patriot Supply. This is preparelikekyle.com. Again, prepare, repair. I'd much rather prepare. You have to ask yourself, are you sleeping well at night? Maybe you're worried about not having the power on because you live in one of those northern states. Peace of mind comes from knowing that you're prepared for anything. That could include a solar generator. It could include an actual generator. It could include having all of your water filtration capabilities and making sure that you've got food in your pantry. My Patriot Supply is America's most trusted emergency food preparedness company. That for a limited time, they're doing a 3-month emergency food kit. This is the same one that we have. It's $100 off right now. Not your typical survival food. It gives you a mixture of different kinds of foods with all kinds of stuff from chicken and beef and fruits and vegetables and snacks and so on. They're all built in there. 2,000 calories a day on average, giving you 100% of the recommended value for 12 different essential vitamins and minerals. We're talking about foods that will last for up to 25 years in storage. It tastes like home cooked. Look, is it going to be a Michelin star? No, it's going to be survival food that allows you to have energy to continue on in the case that something really bad is going down. Your 3-month emergency food kit is going to get free shipping. You've got a disaster replacement warranty, and there's 24/7 US-based tech support or support for your products. Using that discode, go to preparelikekyle.com. You don't have to even type anything in. It's the main thing you're going to see there. You can secure your family's future with $100 off at this moment. And if you order today before 3 p.m., they'll actually ship it out the same day. It's pretty awesome. You can actually get it started right now. It's better to be a year early than to be 1 day late. Preparelikekyle.com. Check them out. Check out our friends over at My Patriot Supply. All right. Here's Scott Bassett talking about this, and then we're going to get into some of the goofiness of it. Remember, there were all these excuses made. Suddenly, people are going to be really upset about pricing. You've heard about it. Amy Klobuchar did it yesterday on the program. We played a little clip from her talking about how egg prices, somehow that has to do with what's going on in the war in Ukraine. Remember, there used to be that expressions like, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? What does the U.S. stopping foreign aid to Ukraine have to do with the price of eggs in the United States? Basically nothing, other than both of them were kind of caused by the Biden administration, and there was all these apologies. Weak leadership led to bad economic policies, killing off 100 million chickens, culling a bunch of things in our chicken farms, leads to more expensive eggs. It's like, yeah, you created all these problems. You don't get to just run away from what it is that you created. Here's the Treasury Secretary basically explaining that. And he's having to defend his own record, which is that they just got there.
What I find interesting is for the past year and a half and during the campaign, most of the media said, oh, the economy is great. It's just a vibe session. Now that President Trump's in office, there's an economic problem. And I'll tell you what the problem was.
We were pretty straightforward on this program.
Well, I haven't seen this program, but in general, this idea that working class Americans didn't know what they were talking about. They didn't know their lived experience. They didn't know what their pocketbooks were feeling. And I'll tell you, President Trump was elected. One of the reasons was the affordability crisis, and we are setting about doing that. So after 4 years of disastrous policies, we're running these gigantic deficits that led to the affordability problem, massive government regulation. So what we had was a demand shock from the government spending that was met by supply constraints with overregulation. Mm-hmm. So we are in the process of deregulating, which will free the supply side, and we are cutting back the government spending. It took 4 years to get us here. President Trump's been in office 5 weeks, and I can tell you we're working every day. Mm-hmm. What I will point out, interest rates, the 10-year bond, which I am focused on, have been down every week since President Trump was president. Mortgage rates have been down every week. So that's a pretty good start.
It's really simple. He may not be the most photogenic guy out there or the most, like smooth operator. He's saying things. His job is not to go out there and do television. His job is to handle what's going on in the Treasury. And that's one of those no-lose fights, by the way. You can't lose the taking over the Treasury and getting them on board. You can't lose the DOJ. The rest of the government agencies, for even having government, I'm not even that worried about them even existing. I'm really not. We're going to talk about education in just a little bit, and that'll be part of it. How about this that's going on right now? Because this has to do with our southern neighbor. We just talked about the northern neighbor, the snow Mexicans. Here's the real Mexicans. They are actually going to be in the Supreme Court making arguments that the United States manufacturing industry that creates firearms is responsible for violence in Mexico. I don't understand how anyone is even allowing this lawsuit to carry on. It was absurd when it was announced. It's absurd that it's going up to the Supreme Court. That we're wasting our money allowing U.S. attorneys representing a foreign government to come in and sue our manufacturers for something that has nothing to do with us. Except, does it kind of have a little bit? Are they suing the Obama Biden administration? I like O'Biden better. Are they suing them for the gun walking stuff they did under Fast and Furious? Because that actually gave a bunch of guns into Mexico. Here's the argument. This is coming from ABC News, which is, generally speaking, like I said, about as close to mainstream, just barely left of center. There's only one gun store in the entire country of Mexico. Yet America's southern neighbor is awash in violent crimes perpetrated with millions of firearms that are made in the United States. Do you see how they kind of like alluded to the fact that it's an American problem because they were made here? In a historic case today, the Supreme Court will consider whether American gun manufacturers, including Smith & Wesson and Glock and Beretta and Colt, yeah, I know Glock is an Austrian company, but they have major headquarters in Smyrna, Georgia, can be held liable for allegedly aiding and abetting the illicit flow of weapons across the border. The High Court has never taken up such an issue with the sweeping gun manufacturer immunity, which was found in a 2005 federal law aimed at protecting this industry. The decision could have a significant impact on firearms companies and the victims of gun violence pursuing accountability. How on earth can you claim that the weapon is the problem when the user is the one who is committing the crime? It is so absurd to try to blame it. This is an end around to do progressive bullshit, which is to try to regulate something that they don't have any right to regulate, because I can just read the plain language of the Bill of Rights. I hope our federal judges come down. I know that the leftist judges are going to go out there because they want to get rid of guns and they have an ideology to impose. But hopefully the right doesn't just get squishy on this stupidity. Here's the claim. They're seeking $10 billion, they being the government of Mexico, $10 billion in damages from and court-mandated safety mechanisms and sales restrictions for U.S. guns. So, in order to try to get their outcome, they want to impose something on you and on me. Let's say me, because I buy a lot of guns. I like buying guns. That's where I spend a lot of my disposable income. I consider them investments for when something like this actually does slip through and my kids have no other choice than to own whatever dad had. I'm buying generational guns at this point, and many of you should be thinking the same way. We've seen a march to the left on firearms rights. You used to be able to order them in the mail, like a federal firearms license, the FFL that you go when you get a transfer. That's a new thing. That's like in my parents' lifetime that was created. You didn't used to have something like that. There was no possibility of federal background checks. They just mailed it to you. Because who in the world gave the federal government the right to decide whether or not we can have any guns, ever? This is the claim. Between 70 and 90% of the crime guns, I like this term, by the way, we'll get Steven Stambolia on here to talk about crime guns again. Crime guns in Mexico are illegally trafficked from the U.S. Essentially, Mexico's gun problem and the problem of armed cartel violence is almost entirely a result of this crime, a gun pipeline from U.S. gun manufacturers ultimately leading to the cartels. Yeah, leaving out the human agency piece of this. If only there was a line in the sand where you could determine whether Mexico laws applied or U.S. laws applied. It turns out that Mexico having a porous border is a Mexican problem too. What responsibility do they bear? Just like we bear the responsibility for allowing millions of people to come into this country and they shouldn't be here. They should be searching people going into Mexico. It turns out that they're a corrupt and weak third-rate power, maybe a fourth-rate or fifth-rate power. If they can't handle their own border, we are not going to legislate our citizens. We better not, because it has nothing to do with it. It brought me to a discussion that I had last night. Like I briefly, Thomas Massey has been moving forward a little bit talking about suppressors. And I wanted to take a quick moment to talk about suppressors and how this actually has something to do with what we're seeing right now. There's a historical precedent for putting the onus on the lawful owner of a product because somebody is willing to use it unlawfully. And it actually segues nicely into some international law that's out there. Before we do that, let's do something that woke me up. There are two things that woke me up this morning. A strong cup of coffee and a huge gust of wind, because I walked outside and there's like 45, 50 mile an hour winds at 5 a.m. That is it's an unwelcome wake up. I know they have a coffee that's called Brutal Awakening, so maybe that's what I got this morning. Blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. Folks, listen up. We're about to share something that could change the way that you start your day. Blackout Coffee isn't just a coffee. It's a wake-up call, a call to rise and grind. By the way, I talked to our guy who reps us with Blackout, and they were like, we're going to send you some, but like, do you want it ground, or do you need beans, or do you want instant pods? Don't say instant pods. And I'm like, I need beans. I grind every morning. So we rise and grind here. You got to push hard. You should never compromise on what you stand for. So this isn't an average cup of joe. In fact, Blackout Coffee was introduced to me by you, my audience. I appreciate that. Every bag of Blackout Coffee is roasted with purpose. It is backed and packed with bold flavor, and it's fueled by the kind of values that built this country. Things we're talking about right now. Grit, determination, refusal to back down. Telling Mexico to go stuff it. They don't just make coffee, they're making a statement. Blackout Coffee is stepping up and adding more warriors to get your orders out faster than ever. When you hit order now, you know your coffee's coming in fresh, and your next move is en route. Use promo code Kyle, K-Y-L-E. You should save 20%, unless you're getting a subscription, in which case you're already saving 20%. Go through our website. Again, it's blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. That gives us the credit for sending you there, letting them know that we sent you, whether you're powering through the daily grind or whether you're just chasing your big goals, refusing to settle for mediocrity or crappy Supreme Court decisions. Blackout Coffee's got your back. Don't drink coffee. Drink Blackout. blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. Get 20% off that first order. You know what? I was looking at the one that we just added into the bag here. I'm a pitch black espresso kind of guy. You may not know that about me, but I like the darker of the coffee bean, the happier I am. I want it to taste bold. In fact, my wife went light on the grind the other day. Nothing against her, but she did. And then we tasted it, and both of us were like, it's not fuerte enough. I need that. In any case. All right. Let's press on with this. I think some of this comes from people not knowing what it is that government is, what government does. This is going to segue nicely into our landing, our Normandy situation. If you don't know what's going on, you don't understand it. Last little piece here. I just saw this. The assumption, this is what happened in Munich the other day. Sorry, in Mannheim. This is in Germany. There was someone who ran a vehicle and 2 people dead, 25 injured into a crowd. And you're like, oh, is it just like the Syrian guy last time? Is it another Muslim that has decided to go hit a bunch of people while they were gathering? No. It is not, actually. It was a German citizen who apparently has been suffering from mental illness. But what it does point out to me, as I read this story and I looked into it and I was like, oh, okay, it's not part of the narrative. We don't need the narrative. We don't need the facts to fit our feelings, right? Our feelings are, oh, there's too many bad immigrants. They're doing bad things. Yeah, also mentally ill people do bad things. What it says is that human nature is fallen. And when people decide to hurt other human beings, they will find a tool, whether it is a rock, whether it is a stick, whether it is a kitchen knife, whether it is a vehicle, they will find something to go do damage to other people. And that happened in Germany. And it doesn't matter whether it's an illegal immigrant who came in there from Syria or whether it's a German-born person in his 40s who's been struggling with mental illness. The decision to go and hurt other people is the problem. It's not the tool. It's certainly not the car that's to blame. And so that's why I find this Supreme Court case blaming guns for Mexico's problem. Why are they so violent? Why don't we just say Mexicans are super violent? Couldn't that be the argument just as easily? I don't think that's true either, by the way. I think there's poverty. I think that there's a global market for narcotics. I think that it is considered illicit in the first world. And therefore, you're going to have violent people who've decided to make serious money meeting a demand that exists in the United States. And they're going to do so by any means necessary, and some of that is going to involve violence. And in order to do violence, guns are the best way to do it. That's my take. Again, I think that this comes down to people not understanding what is government, how government works, what the mechanisms that exist to control government. Check this out. This is Charlemagne. He goes by Charlemagne the THA God, which I find very offensive just because I think it's stupid. Charlemagne talking to Andrew Schultz in a comedy sit down. And they're talking about politics. And what you find out is that people don't know anything. So here he is making the argument that if you're not confirmed, he says sworn in, but he means confirmed by the Senate, that you don't have the ability to actually do anything in power in the federal government. This is a fundamental lack of understanding of how the federal government actually works, which is what we're going to talk about next regarding DOJ.
You don't answer to him.
Well,
he's an elected official.
Well, what does it matter if you're an elected official or not?
Come on. Yes, it does.
Kash Patel's not an elected official.
But he's the head of the FBI.
Yeah, but he's not elected.
But he got sworn in by the Senate. Elon did not.
So you're saying that, and again, I could be wrong about this, but you're saying that if the president hires anybody to look into anything, they're not allowed to do it unless the Senate swears them in?
Yes, if you're going to be over how the federal government spends people's money.
But the amount of people that spend our money that are part of the federal government that we have not sworn in is what's caused all this bloat and bureaucratic bullshit that we're dealing with now.
I don't know anything about that. I'm not even going to sit here and act like that. I do.
I mean, there's all these programs.
I do know that's the problem with Elon Musk.
There's all these programs that they're slashing shit right now, right? Yes. Again, I don't even know what they're slashing, but there are all these programs that they have said have gotten a lot of bloat. In other words, that there's a lot more people have hired. They've hired for these certain like interest projects, and these interest projects have been potentially completed, and those people haven't moved on to work on anything else. They're just still there getting paid by our money. We didn't hire them. The Senate didn't hire them. Somebody at that company hired them. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is like,
I don't know how that works. I really don't.
I think it works just like
when you're USDA, FDA, you're in charge of nuclear weapons. I don't know how that works.
The Senate.
That was a decidedly honest statement, was it not? He just said, like, I don't even know what it is. I just have these feelings. I have these thoughts that I'm going to throw out there in the world, and I'm going to act. He has an audience that is enormous. And I imagine they don't know how it works either. It's really simple. The president is elected by the people. Didn't used to be, by the way, but is today. So let's just go with that. That president gets to set policy for the federal government, as you know it, the executive branch. These are powers that are issued under Article 2. Congress decides where the money is supposed to go. They determine a budget. They determine the laws that need to be enforced. The president goes out there and enforces those laws and priorities. When it comes to foreign policy, the president has more leeway. More on that in a second. When it comes to going down and choosing which things are necessary for prosecution, that is the job of the president via the attorney general, who works for the president. And if he wants to go and get a special advisor, who cares? Does anyone really mind? How many people from the FBI are confirmed by Congress, by the Senate? Just one. In this case, it's Kash Patel at this point. Same story. United States attorneys, this is like the highest level of people are confirmed by the Senate. Most people who work for the federal government are not. And yet they are given tremendous authority to go and carry out mandates, to go carry out the duties of that agency. How does he not know that? Maybe it's the same reason why AOC doesn't know who is in charge or like who Elon Musk is. She somehow thinks he's a billionaire con man, that he just became he's not a billionaire like Jeffrey Epstein was a billionaire, right? A guy who was set up by like intelligence assets, as far as I can tell. It seemed like he had novel ideas and came with some money, invested them, and was able to solve problems in a way that other people didn't. Did he get a bunch of government contracts? Sure. Yeah. Most of Elon's wealth is tied up in things that come through government contracts because he's working in places where the government is hanging out and doesn't necessarily need to be there. I think there would be private money for it. It just turns out that we dump a ton of money into research for health and for energy and for transportation, into space, all this kind of stuff, right? And I don't think we should be doing that. I don't think that the American federal government has any charter to be messing with that. They classify most of that stuff under the Interstate Commerce Clause, which says that the federal government has the purview to regulate commerce between the states. And I think that is a misuse. AOC doesn't know who this guy is. Again, and apparently Democrats don't know what the government does. I'm going to play you back-to-back clips here. One of them is AOC making the argument that Elon Musk shouldn't be there. This is the same point that Charlemagne was saying. They shouldn't be there because this is a con job. Okay. But then you tell me that you don't even know what the government is, and then I'm going to lastly get to the point, the fact that Chris Murphy is apparently going to skip the State of the Union, but he's out there negotiating, it sounds like, with Iran, which Donald Trump is aware of, which sounds like a Logan Act violation. That's one of our oldest laws. It goes back to George Washington's time. You cannot make treaties and you cannot be negotiating on behalf of the federal government when you're in government if you're not the president. That's the president's job, not a member of the Senate. By the way, it seems pretty obvious that Chris Murphy is angling to take the leadership of the party. Not only are they putting out op-eds about him, but he's out there going and doing news hits and where people are saying, well, you're going to lead the party, right? Like, let them run Chris Murphy against a J.D. Vance or anybody else on the Republican side. I think that'll be a bloodbath because he's a moron. He's got lots of moronic things. Not as much as this woman is, though.
Doge did not exist 2 years ago. 19-year-olds were not raiding the Treasury 2 years ago. People who have no idea with medical background have not been hauling in and creating kangaroo courts for scientists to dismiss them 2 years ago. That started happening now. Elon Musk is not a scientist. He is not an engineer. He is a billionaire con man with a lot of money. He does not have this kind of good background.
Yeah, he doesn't have this kind of good background. That's what I'm most worried about. The good background that AOC, a freaking bartender who got some half-ass degree from what, Boston College or Boston University? I can't remember which one. Give me a break, lady. You don't have a background to be a congressperson. Except you got elected. So that's how it works. And guess what? Trump got elected, so he gets to pick his advisors. If he turns out that he wants to get the richest man in the world to come and give him advice, he can do that. You can't do anything about it. They're going to sit there and whine about it. Why? Because it's all about envy, honestly. It's all about jealousy. These people are just kind of turning on the same thing, which is coveting. Turns out that was one of the sins that was sort of outlawed. If you had any kind of background in this country, you would understand that coveting what other people have is actually really, really an ugly look. Also, ignorance is not great. When you don't know how the government works, here's an argument on CNN about that.
We had people who are in charge of tax fraud losing their jobs. What are you talking about?
Because what? Democrats wanted to add 84,000 more IRS agents? That is bloated bureaucracy that's failing the people. That is not a critical. Tax fraud is not a critical need for the country.
Yeah, but that money is going to come back. That's how we get more federal revenue, right? The IRS is in charge of trying to make sure that we have less tax fraud less tax waste, right? And to allow the cuts to the IRS means we're going to lose money. I mean, this is not allowing taxpayers to get their money back. We're losing money as a country.
And going back to loyalty, I think it's a very fair point because you claim that Trump is not asking for loyalty within the federal government. He absolutely is. I was at the Department of Justice. They're telling, essentially attorneys, career prosecutors, if you are not loyal to Trump, then you should get out of here. He fired the January 6th prosecutor. He's trying to fire FBI agents. 5,000 FBI agents who worked on January 6 cases. If you fire 5,000 FBI agents, we will have a terrorist attack, unfortunately.
We have elections for a reason in this country. We vest all executive authority in a president of the United States, not in an unelected bureaucracy, not in independent agencies, but in a president. The president's agenda matters. When a Republican is president, the bureaucracy resists. It has to stop.
That sounds more like a king. It does not sound like president of the United States.
They don't even know what they're arguing about. It's the same problem. It's like how dare the executive do the executive priorities? They get to decide their priorities. It's the same reason they shut down the Keystone XL pipeline. They didn't want to spend money on that. They didn't want federal resources. They wanted to lock up federal lands. They had the ability to do it. Was it stupid? Yes. Was it shitty that they went out there and did a compliance purge of my former agency and got rid of as many as 3,000 people? You're crying about 5,000. It's not agents, by the way. It's 5,000 employees at FBI who were involved in J6 prosecutions, and nobody's been fired over that from what we can tell. Here's where they are going to get fired. This guy was forced to resign yesterday. This is James Dennehy. He was the ADIC. It's known as the assistant director in charge. That's the highest person in the New York field office. There are three, as far as I am aware, there are three field offices in the FBI that have what's called an ADIC. That means they have multiple special agents in charge because the branches or the divisions inside that agency are so big. They have a counterintelligence special agent in charge. They have a counterterrorism special agent in charge. When you have 1,000+ agents and you have hundreds of support personnel in each one of those kind of things, you end up having one guy that's at the top. Should they have it? I don't know. It doesn't matter what they call him. That's what he was. He was the top guy in New York. He was the one where the buck has to stop that said that they were not sending the Epstein files over to Pam Bondi. There's not a chain of command inside of the FBI. So for all of the rank and file talk that you hear people say, there's no rank, there's no file. Nobody ever stood up and inspected the troops. But you do have the requirement to follow a lawful order when you work in law enforcement or when you work for the executive. Where does the authority of the Attorney General come from? From the President of the United States. It is vested in the Article 2 powers of the Constitution. And it is delegated specifically for running the DOJ to the Attorney General. The Attorney General, in turn, looks down to the FBI and says, these are the things we want. That goes through the Deputy Director and the Director. And then as you flow downhill, you end up with these people who are the assistant directors, in this case, the assistant director running the New York field office. And this guy, James Dennehy, was the one who wrote the dig in email saying that he was going to dig a foxhole and he was ready to protect himself and he was going to defend all of these people that didn't want to do what the FBI is required to do. The FBI works for, and I found this out very acutely, works for what goes on over at DOJ. When they said that we had to go get a shot, nobody in the FBI stood up and said, hey, by the way, these are our employees and we're going to defend them. And you can't tell a bunch of people who already have existing federal tenure inside of their jobs. You can't tell them to go do something that wasn't part of their employment conditions. They immediately rolled over because those were Biden's priorities. They're pushing back because this is Donald Trump's priorities. The status quo says, do not change us. Let us continue being Democrat operatives as long as we have. Are all the people in the FBI Democrat operatives? No. Are all the leadership Democrat operatives? No, they are not. But more of them are used to saying yes than no. They're willing to say yes to FBI culture and status quo, which continues to lead and is driven by the left. It is driven by this intelligence idea that they know best and that they are not going to be accountable. Let's talk about the Normandy analogy. It's not a long one. You guys will get it right away. So I'm not going to belabor it too long for you. Here's Winston Churchill. He said, we'll fight on the beaches, on the landing grounds, in the fields, in the streets. We'll fight in the hills and we shall never surrender. I put that up specifically because that's the order of operations. If you don't win the fight on the beach, you don't get to hold the landing grounds. You don't get to land the rest of the crafts. It is the foothold that has to be successful. If you don't take the beaches and the landing grounds, you can't make it into the fields. And you certainly can't progress into the streets where the cities are. You can't fight in the hills if you don't get off the beach. You have to get to the beach first. And what we're seeing, the first hold, which I've been telling you guys from the beginning, Kash Patel needed to come into this in two ways. The same way that we went in hard and fast in Afghanistan. You had to shock and awe. You had to go and take ground rapidly and aggressively and let people know that this is what's happening, and either you get on board or get the hell off the train. You can retire, you can resign, you can be fired. There is no choice but to get on board, because the goal is going to be rigid obedience to the Constitution, not whatever the hell else has been going on for the last 8 years. And all of my FBI time was basically a downhill slide, watching an agency fall into chaos, serving a megalomaniac like Jim Comey, who believed in Jim Comey above all else because he stood taller than everybody else. He thought that he was above everybody else. A glaring middle finger to the American people. That attitude is unacceptable. And Kash is actually pretty mellow as a human being. He's not like an outsized personality. He's not a polished bureaucrat. He's a regular guy. He plays hockey. We've covered that here. I'm a fan of Kash. They are losing right now, though. And I don't say that lightly. And I've said that to the folks that are over there, that anybody that wants to listen, you are losing this fight, and this fight cannot be lost. You brought in a crew of people that were status quo folks. You brought in people from the FBI Agents Association. Their job is to suck up and maintain access. You brought in people from the FBI Society of Ex-FBI Agents. By the way, all of this and saying what's true could have negative repercussions for me in the lawsuit that we're working on. But it has to be said, because people have to understand this was not a victory just getting them in the door. This was them launching the landing crafts. The dates are down, the troops are going into conflict, and they are losing because they don't have the right, they don't understand what the enemy is. Imagine going into Normandy and not knowing that there were going to be machine gun nests up on the hills. Imagine hitting the beach and not realizing how deep the water was, and how long it was that deep, and how much time and exposure you were going to have in the water before you got to the dry land. All of that is a failure. You can't do it and be successful. I want you to listen to something that is unbelievably bad. This is Pam Bondi. She went on Hannity, and she claims that the information that she got about where the Epstein files were from sources. Sources inside the FBI had to tell the Attorney General what's going inside the FBI? Have you not been paying attention to us? You had to go and take it by force. You're trying to do like coercion and try to sneak around. Walk in there, and anybody who doesn't give you what you want needs to be fired for insubordination. Do you understand that you can be removed for what's called lack of candor? You can be suspended immediately. It is the number one way that people get removed from the FBI. Lack of candor. Very simple. It doesn't mean anything to real people. If I came up to you at work and said, sorry, but you've lacked candor, you're done here, you'd be like, what? What the hell are you talking about? That is what you say at the FBI, and everyone knows, oh shit, I'm done here. They're going to roll me out. It's time for me to resign or retire or whatever. Lack of candor is what should be used to get rid of people. You didn't tell me the answer, and you're in a position to know it. Either you lacked competency or you lacked candor. This was the problem I had with Chris Wray for all of the time that he was there, for 7.5 years. He clearly either lacked one of the two, and either way, you can't do the job. You can walk to the top of the field office, the deputy director, the assistant, the associate deputy director, and all of the executive assistant directors. These are the tiers we're running down. If you don't know what's going on in your area, and if you can't get all of the evidence, which, by the way, it's not sitting at the Southern District of New York. Are you high? The Southern District of New York may have had copies of everything, but you don't go give all the originals, and you sure as hell are not giving all of the evidence over there unless they're actively doing a prosecution. That's crazy to me. The evidence is maintained in evidence lockers, especially in a thing called Elsher. If it's digital evidence, the FBI has it. So she's going to be talking about paper files. Who cares about paper files when we talk about Epstein? Where are the countless hours of video? All of the DVDs that we saw that were burned off and they were labeled. Where are those things? Because that's the stuff that matters. And I don't need to see it. And by the way, neither do you. You don't need to see all the video footage of what was going on the island. You don't have any right to see that necessarily. What we need to know is that there's going to be prosecutions. They need to announce, we have access to all of the evidence. The director of the FBI is in possession of it, knows where it is, knows who the Elsher techs are, knows who the evidence technicians are, has a firm grasp that the chain of custody is legit, and we are pursuing prosecution. There needs to be indictments and prosecutions of these people. It's completely irrelevant whether or not the American people get to see it. There are many, many examples that you do not get to have all of the evidence put out in front of you. This is Pam Bondi sitting on Fox News which she needs to be doing far less of. She needs to get to work and do the job of winning over this battle and not do some like half-assed publicity battle, which is embarrassing. It really is embarrassing. And I'll show you how embarrassing it is. There's people on the conservative side that are making cartoons, making fun of these people. John Hannity asking her questions. Hey, where are the Epstein files?
We all did. And the FBI handed over a couple hundred pages of documents. But, Sean, I gave them a deadline of Friday at 8 a.m. to get us everything. And a source had told me where the documents were being kept. Southern District of New York, shock. So we got them all by, hopefully all of them, Friday at 8 a.m., thousands of pages of documents. I have the FBI going through them, and Cash is also, now that we have Cash here, it's a game changer, of course, and Cash is going to, Director Patel, is going to get us a detailed report as to why the FBI withheld all of those documents.
Okay, I want to be clear because I think people got frustrated because they were expecting more. You were expecting more, and you didn't find out less than 24 hours before the release. You got a whistleblower that confirmed that there were way more documents that they were supposed to turn over, and then you found out just before that.
Well, sure. And you're looking at these documents going, these aren't all the Epstein files. There were flight logs, there were names and victims' names. And we're going, where's the rest of the stuff? And that's what the FBI had turned over to us. And so a source said, whoa, all this evidence is sitting in the Southern District of New York. Yep. So based on that, I gave them the deadline, Friday at 8, a truckload of evidence arrived. It's now in the possession of the FBI. Cash is going to get me and himself, really, a detailed report as to why all these documents and evidence had been withheld. And, we're going to go through it as fast as we can.
I don't need you to go through it. I need you to take over the DOJ and actually own that entity. You need to get rid of people that are disloyal to what's happening right now. And by that, I mean the Constitution. This is absurd stuff. This is juvenile. I've been giving Pam Bondi kind of I didn't want to kind of weigh in, mostly because I wanted to see what would happen. Look, it takes a little while to learn a job. If she didn't have people telling her what they were up against, and that's what this is. This is a failure to estimate the depth of the problem. This is a failure to understand just how effed up this is. You walked in there. This is bringing like a squirt gun to a machine gun fight. Unprepared. And it's obvious to people that are watching. Truck full of evidence. It was all at the Southern District of New York, at the United States Attorney's Office. Do you know who runs the Southern District of New York? The Attorney General. It's part of the DOJ. So you're telling me that the files were within your own organization is what you're telling me, not some like thing that you're the parent organization of. The FBI is answers to DOJ. You're telling me it was actually at a DOJ entity and you couldn't gain it? You haven't taken over? This is what's going on right now. The counterinsurgency, the counter coup that is happening is that DOJ is holding on. The entrenched status quo people are holding on to these pieces of property, and they're not going to give them up. Just like the Germans didn't want to give up the beaches in France. Not at all. They're going to fight tooth and nail because their very survival is on the line. Drives me nuts. This is how silly they look. And I actually think this is not a cash problem. This is an attorney general problem. Trading Merrick Garland, who sounds like an old woman, for a prettier, younger woman who doesn't do anything competently and is letting people like inside the agency run the agency. This is problematic. We needed someone that came in strong. I would have loved to see Matt Gaetz, to be fair. I think he would have flipped tables. And he may have been inappropriate, and he may have upset people, and he may have hurt some feelings. Pam Bondi needs to stop being a politician and stop being friendly and nice and go through and cut some throats. And if you can't do it, then hire someone underneath you to do it. You can still do your Fox News hits. If you don't have a deputy attorney general that's going to go and slice throats and knows where the bodies are buried and knows how to find those bodies and knows that the Southern District of New York is part of your organization, we're going to lose. And it's a really serious problem. If you don't realize it right now, this is the fight. IRS, DOJ, so Treasury and DOJ, where the money comes from and where the weapons come from. Those are the two pieces that are going to be incredibly important. You don't get to rely on sources inside the FBI telling the DOJ that the DOJ has the files, but the DOJ is not giving them to the boss of the DOJ. Makes my head explode. This is how you end up with people making fun of these folks at a very high level.
Cash, the Epstein files are literally on my desk right now, and I'm about to review them to make sure they're all here so I can release some of them. Just make sure you have all the files before releasing them. Otherwise, this will just seem like a huge publicity stunt. Well, it's too late for that. I already gave some of the files to the influencers, and now they're with the photographer. Now be quiet while I open the files. Oh, damn it. Those pigs rickrolled us. What are you talking about? They're basically saying they'll never give up the Epstein files. That means they've probably destroyed them all, and there's no reason to think we'll ever get to release some of them again. We have to get to the bottom of this. We have to know who's tampering with the Epstein files. You're right, Cash. I can go to the FBI office in New York and recover whatever files they have left, and then I can release some of them. That's it, Adam Schiff. Come on, my little pocket piggy. Eat the Epstein files.
Yeah, all right. So anyway, they make fun of it. They talk about Epstein hanging out with Adam Schiff, the people that are theoretically scared of the FBI. Look, you got rid of one guy. We need to not celebrate tiny little victories. This guy should have not even been in there. Day one should have been gone. Anybody that's a senior executive in the FBI should have found themselves working out of Puerto Rico. They didn't take the game plan, the battle plan very seriously. And this is a failure. This is happening under Cash. It's happening under Pam Bondi, and the buck has to stop somewhere. I didn't spend the last couple years telling you guys what was wrong so that people didn't listen to it, and they're not listening to it, and they're actually experiencing what happens when you don't pay attention to the people on the inside. I don't want to get phone calls saying, I can't believe how messed up your organization is. It's not my organization anymore. I don't work there anymore. I've spent the last, 2.5, 3 years doing nothing but cultivating people. I have sources because I don't work there. Pam Bondi doesn't get to have sources. She gets to have direct reports. And indirect reports coming and telling her what needs to happen. So removing some figurehead is not going to be a problem solved. It doesn't. Meanwhile, as I said, Donald Trump, he's about to go and address Congress. You're going to see some Democrat pushback. All that is as it should be. Let them continue to be unserious people. Let them have people like Chris Murphy, who backs transgender nonsense. Let him be the voice of them. Let him be the responding party. That's fine. Trump administration needs to have people in those two dangerous places getting to work. And I'm not sure that Pam Bondi is getting it done seriously. Trump has a history of getting rid of some folks. She's obviously well connected to the right people, but she needs to understand the fight that she is in. And it doesn't sound like she has. And doing Hannity hits is not going to be worth your time. There's a prep. There's 2 hours of your day that you pulled out to go and do that Hannity hit. And it seems like a waste when you could have been doing something else. That opportunity cost is too high right now. Here is Senator Chris Murphy talking about skipping the State of the Union. Democrats don't want to play ball. They want to take their ball and go home. They want to shut things down. That's fine. If you're going to do it unilaterally, so be it. But you better do it knowing what's at stake and knowing that the people inside those agencies are resisting. You don't get to talk about the deep state being the problem and then not really realize that you're dealing with the deep state and or administrative state. You have to understand the status quo wants to maintain. That's why these people are not going to be there for the State of the Union address.
You have been trying to lead your party, lead your colleagues in being aggressive and pushing back, as we've heard a lot this morning, against Donald Trump. You're skipping his joint address to Congress on Tuesday. You believe other Democrats, House and Senate Democrats, should do the same, and why?
Oh, I think every Democrat needs to make up their own mind. I think that State of the Union speech is going to be a farce. I think it's going to be a MAGA pep rally, not a serious talk to the nation. I think Donald Trump is going to spew a series of lies about his alignment with Russia, about what he's trying to do to allow Elon Musk to essentially monetize the American government to enrich Musk and his billionaire crowd. And I'm just not going to be a part of that. Listen, the case I'm making to Democrats is that we have to fight every single day. Every single day. Republicans flood the zone. Democrats have to flood the zone. They flood the zone with lies. We flood the zone with truth. We are going to stop this billionaire takeover of government. We are going to stop their destruction of democracy, which they have to do because what they are attempting to do, gut Medicaid in order to feed another set of tax cuts to Elon Musk and his billionaire friends, it's unpopular. We're going to stop that billionaire takeover, that destruction of our democracy, only by fighting them every single day.
Okay, so he's going to stop and he's going to protect democracy. By the way, if you go back to people that were serious, like the last time that you saw Democrats actually making some sense, you got people who was a real problem Even FDR referred to it as a republic. I don't know when the democracy talking point came out, but it's obviously been something that we keep hearing over and over again, in the same way that migrants equals illegal aliens. All of this, like word games, is screwy. How about this? CNN letting the cover drop. Democrats, this is what they're doing. This is the Senate Democrats, so that's Chris Murphy and co. They decided to block a bill that would ban transgender students in girls' sports. Notice the difference between transgender students and sports played by girls. They know there's a difference because transgender students are not girls. That's what it was set up to do. They can't even do simple things. They're choosing the 20 in the 80-20. Most Americans want to see not little boys going out there and dominating kickball or dominating softball or playing girls lacrosse and knocking them out. You're going to have girls just completely withdraw. Let them take that side. But we got to win the battles that need to be won. The culture battle is great. The executive orders are great. If you don't take the DOJ and you don't take the Treasury, where the money comes from and the power comes from, you're going to be in deep, deep shit. I say that with no joy because I only want to see success there. And I don't know if they can handle another 10 days of it, because what you're doing is you're just giving all these people the instinct that they're winning. You're turning the tide, and morale and esprit de corps is a big deal. And what they've been learning, they being the deep sort of entrenched people inside DOJ and within the FBI, is that we can resist and we might lose some people, but they're not going to take all of us, and we're still going to win in the long run. And the Attorney General is relying on sources. Bad news. All right. We're going to end it here for the day. Guys, you can find us on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin for the live show. If you want to watch it live as well, you can see it on X @Kyle Seraphin. If you want to watch us after the fact, check out our locals community. It's KyleSeraphin.com is the cheat code to get there. You'll find some of the great chops. We'll also put up all the articles all the time. And you can also watch or listen to us on Spotify. It's our hosting company. If you want to watch the video without any of the pop-up ads that you'll find on YouTube or anywhere else, you can find it over there. For those of you that are joining us on YouTube, feel free. Make sure you guys sign up with us on Spotify in case you miss an episode. We're going to drop things that are honest and accurate, even when it hurts our own team's feelings, quote unquote, our team, whatever the hell that looks like. We don't have a team here. We just care about Americans, and we care about being accurate and being honest and assessing the problems without any of the kind of fluffiness that goes on. We're certainly not going to do this kind of puffiness that you saw that Sean Hannity do, where they're apologizing for failing. I do have a palate cleanse for you today. It's just a reminder of how bad things could be. This is a Australian who's living in the UK being reminded that everything can be taxed, including things that have no business being taxed. And that is a real danger that you face when you let the government get out of hand and take over. The government is meant to serve you. You're not supposed to serve the government. And the government is meant to serve the person that runs the government, not vice versa. Pam Bondi needs to stop doing sources. We're going to end up doing like England, where you have to actually pay for the privilege of watching a television in your own house.
I live in England, and I just got sent a letter in the mail saying that an officer's coming to visit me at my house. And you're probably thinking, Dallin, what? Are you a criminal? Well, it fucking turns out that I am. Why you're being visited? To ensure you have a fucking TV license, and this includes Amazon. You need a fucking license to watch TV. What the fuck kind of rule is that? You can't even watch Netflix on your laptop without needing a license. 170 fucking pounds? Are they taking the piss? Like, Jesus fuck, there's a cost of living crisis. We got wars. We got fucking knife crime and 20,000 phones getting snatched every 14 seconds. And they're coming after me for fucking not paying for a license to watch fucking Game of Thrones.
That's what it's about. There's a reason why we separated from the Brits and why they've been going down the downhill slide. What happens in England is coming this way if we're not paying attention. That's why I worry about it. The Facebook and real life thing. It's a thing. Something to be prepared for. All right, stick around for the American Radicals podcast. We're going to drop the Rumble chat in there. If you guys want to find them anywhere else, look for them at AmradPod. That's going to be on X. You can find them over on Spotify as well. And yeah, see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully these people get this stuff this has got to get under control. If we don't hold the beach, it's all over. And I don't say that lightly. Sorry to be a downer. Dang, I hate being a downer. We'll do better tomorrow. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. God bless.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.